Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. Want to improve your organization's customer service? Looking for insider tips to knock your customer socks off? Then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Yannick Grant.
Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. On today's episode, our guest is Jim Tincher, CCXP. Jim is a nationally recognized customer experience thought leader, journey mapping expert, keynote speaker, and author. Jim led customer experience programs at Best Buy and United Health Group before launching his innovative CX consultancy, Heart of the Customer, which helps startups to Fortune 50 organizations use voice of the customer research to improve loyalty and boost revenue. His book, How Hard Is It to Be Your Customer, is considered a must-read for CX-focused leaders, and Live Help Now support B influencers. Marketers, CustomerThink, Feedspot, and Litmus have all named Jim a customer experience influencer to follow. So without further delay, welcome, Jim.
Thanks, Unique. I'm really glad to be here. Been looking forward to today.
All right. So, Jim, can you tell us a little bit about your journey, how it is that you got to where you are? I know it says in your bio that you had been quite inspirational and pioneering in leading customer experience programs at Best Buy and United Health Group. And then that kind of propelled you to start your own consultancy firm, Heart of the Customer. But just give us a little bit about your history and how it is that you got to where you are today.
Sure. I don't know why. I've always been focused on the customer. I remember my very first job out of school. I was in technical support. And on vacation, I wanted to go visit a customer over where I was visiting my now wife at her home in Connecticut. And I wanted to go visit a customer while I was there. And people said, why? Go on vacation. But it was just the way I've always thought. I went from there to small business. I went to Best Buy. And again, if you're in small business, you have to be customer obsessed or you don't survive. Similarly, Best Buy very much focused on that. Mm-hmm. And then I went to a new organization, and I naively thought everybody was customer focused and found out there were other methods. And literally nobody in our marketing or product development group had ever met a client. And I was amazed by that. And as a result, we had the most complex products in the marketplace because we were building the products we wanted to buy. Mm-hmm. And our customers were giving us feedback that this is way too complex. People don't want all of this, all these features. They want it nice and simple. But again, because we didn't have customer feedback, we were building really complex products. And it really came to light when we went out and talked to our customers. So we divided them into customers who were really successful with their products and those who were struggling. Mm-hmm. And I created a program called Hug Your Customers, which, by the way, sounds really good. Until you have a sales rep call a customer and say, hey, we want to do a Hug Your Customers meeting with you. And we're Minnesotans. We don't normally hug. I got a little awkward. So we changed to collecting best practices. But I started taking our executives out to meet the clients. And what they realized was that the clients that were struggling were the ones who were using our materials and following our advice. Mm-hmm. The ones who are most successful are the ones who are ignoring our advice and making their own materials. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a hard lesson. But luckily, because I was bringing the leadership out to hear firsthand, I didn't have to beat them over the head with that.
Right.
And they learned on their own. And that really has been the foundation of our work today. Now, what really led for me to start the company is the fact that I got fired a lot. Because I remember one VP saying, Jim, you make a lot of noise. I do make a lot of noise because we were just so inward focused and I was trying to change the culture. And one of the things I learned is I was trying to change the culture from the bottom up. Mm. That does not work. I mean, you need those pieces, but you have to start with the top. And that was one of the lessons that really has informed us here at Heart of the Customer is that when we help an organization think about their customers, we have to engage the leadership from the beginning. And that was a lesson I learned the hard way by trying to start with a bottoms-up approach.
Mm-hmm. All right. So it's almost like your experiences have literally helped to mold who you are, drive the different aspects that you've envisioned for customer experience, especially with helping your clients to realize their own customer journeys.
Definitely.
One of the biggest things that a lot of organizations have been focused on, especially since the pandemic, is their customer journey. they've been looking at their customer journey from end to end, and they've also been looking at how it is that because of the pandemic and we're literally forced, a lot of organizations had, I think some companies had been proactive enough to look and see that their customer behaviors were changing and they were adapting pretty well. But some companies were still back, operating as if we were in 1995, early 2000, and they fully had not transformed a lot of their customer behaviors into how their business functions. And so how is it that you as an expert in this area could maybe give us some tips as to how an organization can look at digitally transforming, but ensuring that their team members are also on board with that digital transformation?
Well, that's huge. We should break those into a couple of different pieces.
No
First
problem.
of all, the digital part is accelerating. We had a customer experience event earlier in the week, and a speaker from Target who was saying that their 2030 goals now have to be realized this year. That there is such a move towards digital now with the coronavirus that it's had to cause them to have to pivot very quickly.
Right.
And we are seeing that across the board. Our clients, what's beneficial is our clients have already taken the time to learn what our customer needs and what are the moments of truth in the journey. Mm-hmm. So they can build digital platforms that allow customers to be more successful by understanding those moments of truth as well as those friction points.
Right.
And we find that's really critical, that if you take a broken process and digitize it, all you get is a broken digitized process, and you're not helping anybody. Mm-hmm. So it's really critical. Go back there and understand what are those key needs of my customers first. And so what we've been doing is during this time, even if the output is to be digital, which it often is, what's more important is understand what are those customers' needs in any online or offline environment. What are their challenges? What are the points of friction today? And to use that to design the digital.
Right.
We are people first, digital second. Mm-hmm. And people leaders tend to forget that. They seem to think that we're all digital people and we just need digital tools. No, we need to solve the human need first and use a digital platform to do that.
Okay. So we have to solve the human need first. So I'd like some practical examples. I see in your, just from your bio that retail and healthcare are areas that you have a lot of experience with. So maybe you could give us one from each. Maybe, just how it is that you could put the human need first. What does that look like in a real life business example?
Sure. Although it's been interesting because our customer base, the heart of the customer, has not been so much retail. We do a lot of healthcare work, a lot of B2B and B2B2C work. So with businesses customers or as an intermediary to the customer. But one of the things that we are finding across the board in almost any industry is the need for operational transparency. And let me back that up a bit. What do I mean by that? And it's really humankind's second most awesome invention after fire is the Domino's pizza tracker. It's amazing how many people we talk to want a Domino's pizza tracker for everything. And we find most organizations are not providing that operational transparency. So if we were to go back 5 or 6 years in time, I don't remember exactly when the pizza tracker came out, and I told you, I could come up with an app that could show you when your dough is put down, who's putting down the dough, and when somebody puts on sauce, somebody puts ingredients, tosses it in the oven, you'd have said, why would I want that? That's daft. But when it showed up, people said, I love that. In fact, I want to know if I'm applying for life insurance, I want to know what's happening in that. We call it operational transparency, and there's a great Harvard Business Review article on this, very influential to our thinking. But when organizations provide operational transparency to their customers, the customers feel the organization treats them more fairly. Even if the outcome is bad, let's use the example of life insurance, even if they're declined, they feel better about the process because they had visibility into it, and it removes a lot of anxiety. We find that's true in almost every industry. When we work with distributors who are providing materials to their clients, when they can provide operational transparency to when the order is placed, when products are shipped, Amazon clearly does this quite well. In the business environment, it's not often done as well.
Right.
We're starting to see that coming through a little bit more through some transparency. In health insurance, if I submit a claim, I want to know where that claim is. I want to be able to see where it's working its way through.
Right.
I want that transparency. So that's what we're finding across the board. Now, Unique, I didn't answer another part of your question going back, so I want to circle back. And you asked about the digital piece, but you also asked, how do we get people to actually implement and to understand customer needs and to actually put in place the processes needed?
Right.
And this is critical to our entire practice here. We build everything we do around change management. And in fact, we have a chapter in the book specifically about how to apply change management principles to journey mapping. Now, a number of years ago, it's been like 4 years, we did a survey on companies regarding their success in journey mapping. And I am a journey mapping geek. My license plate is literally JRNYMAP. That's all. Last week, we drove down to Texas and dropped off the car to my youngest, who those will be the fastest plates you have ever seen swapped out, because there's no way Jared wants to have journey map on that car. So I'm a geek. And we did the survey. I thought that everybody, when we asked how successful you were, would give you a 4 or a 5, which clearly journey mapping works. Everybody's going to say it's successful. Not what we found. What we found is that only about 1 out of 3 did that. Another 1 out of 3 gave it a 1 to 3, and another 1/3 said it's too soon to tell. Now, we just updated the data. We did another survey coming out here more about journey management, and the numbers are even worse. We're finding that only about 15% are saying that they are really successful. Most, 45%, so it's not literally most, are saying it's too soon to tell, which is not suggesting it's trending well. If you spend $125,000, $150,000, which is what it takes to do journey mapping right, and you tell your boss, if your boss asks you, hey, did that work? And you say, I don't know, it's too soon to tell. That's not a good conversation. We find that most organizations are doing the mapping and they're not being successful because they haven't thought about change management. What change management means, when we did this research, we found the most important factors in being successful are, first of all, knowing what it is you're trying to map. Going after an actual business problem. We've had people tell us our business problem is we don't have a journey map. That's not a business problem. We've had other people say our business problem is our survey scores are low. That's not a business problem. We are losing customers. We are not, customers are not using us for this one type of product. We have a lot of people calling in, which is costly to them and to us. Those are business problems. So it starts with going after a business problem because that's how you engage executives.
Right.
Second of all, then, is involving customers in the process, which we should not have to talk about. It's called customer journey mapping for a reason. But we run across all these consultants and as well as practitioners who think that if you take a bunch of employees and put them in a room and give them Post-it notes, we got a customer journey map. Not true. What we found when we do that, because that is part of our process early on, is that we get really good answers that are wrong. Everybody thinks they know the customer journey. But when we match that up against what customers actually tell us, there is a huge mismatch between the two. Because you are just reacting to part of the journey you see, and very few employees can actually articulate the entire journey and are actually missing what's most important to customers. So the second part is involve customers, but the third one, which is actually the most important, is who's on the team. If we go back to this, we don't involve our digital team and we map the journey and we come up with all these new digital items we need, you go to them and say, hey, we have this beautiful journey map telling you all these things you need to do differently. Well, they're not going to listen to you. Why should they? They've got their own list of things.
Right.
But if you involve them in the process, you get them as part of it, that's when the magic happens. And even more importantly is involving leadership. Getting the leaders to be part of the project, getting them to talk to customers, that's when you start to embed it inside of a culture.
That makes sense. So basically, you need to have, would you suggest then everybody should be involved, at least all of the different touch points that could possibly impact the customer?
Oh, definitely. We usually have about 30 people involved in our projects, sometimes more across the organization.
Right. And let's say for an organization with a size of maybe 2,500 employees, let's say they're a financial institution. They have a bank, sure. They have an insurance arm, they have an investment arm. In a case like that, if they're really trying to do a transformational journey, it would be recommended that all the leaders from the different business units are involved.
So, Unique, it sounds like you have a particular customer in mind or company in mind there.
No, not necessarily, but I would just want to use a specific example because I do have some of the persons that listen to this podcast that are in that line of business. So it would be good for them to specifically hear, because sometimes you read books, Jim, and the books speak at a very high level, but they're not bringing it down on a granular level to where you are in the organization. I am the marketing associate in the marketing department, and I think if we do this in a digital way, it will help to influence our marketing efforts. But how does that transcend into the entire journey from end to end? And is it connected with the other departments and how it is that they're feeding information to the customers from their units? That's where I'm trying to get at, so that everybody that's listening understands that it's not just a responsibility of one department.
You're exactly right. And yeah, so it first of all comes back to what's the business problem you're trying to solve? Mm-hmm. And likely you're actually not going to involve all three of those groups because the business problem typically doesn't go across the bank, the investments, and the, I think you said insurance is the third area.
Right.
It's probably more granular. And so let's say, for example, the business problem. So we worked with one bank. Let's use that as an example. Mm-hmm. Where their business problem was that they're always the secondary bank. So somebody else was doing some other bank was the primary purpose. They were secondary. Mm-hmm. And we isolated it because in the onboarding process, that first 90 days, clients weren't really learning all they could do with the bank. And so they kept it as a secondary kind of a fund money bank, but they weren't using it for their primary checking account, their savings account, their credit card. They typically came in because they needed a separate bank account for some reason, and they stayed with that.
Okay.
So we wanted to learn how could we create an amazing onboarding process that got customers to learn that they could use this bank for way more of their banking. In that case, we needed to involve clearly the front line. You need to involve representatives from the individual branches because that's where a lot of the rubber hits the road. You also need marketing. Going back to your point about marketing, you have to have marketing there because marketing should be creating a lot of these materials that you're using for the onboarding.
Right.
Product, because product can learn what they're doing and come up with new products that fit that. The contact center, because they need to match as well what's happening, as well as the digital team. So a minimum of these 5 teams all need to be involved.
Brilliant. So that's really, really good information. Now, in terms of customer journey mapping, I did a webinar recently, and I think one of the questions I asked was how often do they revisit their customer journey map? Now, as a customer journey map expert, Jim, could you tell us if you're an organization and you've never done journey mapping before, or let's say you did it 5 years ago, what's the recommended time for you to revisit it to make sure that, all the touch points are operating the way how they should? Just to give people an idea, because I think a lot of companies think they build this journey map and that's it. It's almost like a policy or a procedure that was created in 1970 and it stays there forever.
Well, you're right. The journey does change. We just did this survey, which we're right now on the analysis of, and we find that 90% of the respondents basically stop there with the mapping. Ideally, what you're doing is that once you create this map, we create 2 different kinds of maps. We create one, which is a change management map, highly graphical. The research is pretty clear. It's called the visual superiority effect.
Right.
If you create a highly visual artifact, people understand it more and they remember it better. So we have that one. Then for some of our clients, we go beyond that, where we create a data-oriented map, which is bringing in the feeds of the operational data as well as the sentiment data, the surveys, to show how that journey is as a baseline and how it changes over time. If you do that, that largely answers your question, because as long as the journey is working the same, and by bringing in the operational data, and I should say financial as well, you can start to see, is that journey still healthy, or are we seeing more cancellations? Are we seeing lower additional products added on? Are we finding business problems are happening? Because typically the business problems are originated by a customer problem. And so we have the sentiment as part of that. So you're able to track sentiment over time. Hopefully you have a journey survey. You have some touch point surveys. So you bring that into the living journey map. But you also bring in that operational data so you can see, wow, we're seeing a lot of calls at this phase of the journey. Or we're seeing that our average basket size, going back to retail, is dropping significantly or increasing. That's when you need to go back out to your customers, because the live journey map is telling you that things have changed and you need to go back and figure out why.
Right. Okay. So that definitely does answer some of those questions. Now, in terms of personalizing the experience for the customer, Jim, I know artificial intelligence and augmented reality are some things that companies are incorporating into the experience to make it more personalized. I was watching a video recently where IKEA literally has the augmented reality. You just hold your phone up or your iPad up and you can just position the furniture in your house to see what it looks like. So you're actually almost choosing it without physically going to the IKEA location. What are your thoughts on embracing the power of being digital to the core to enhance customer experience and improving personalization in the process?
Absolutely critical, and not far enough along yet. Amazon has spoiled us all. I mean, every area we work in, we tell them Amazon is your competitor.
Yeah.
If you're a bank, if you're the distributor I mentioned earlier, you're a health insurance organization, you're a nonprofit, Amazon is your competitor. No, not literally. If you're a nonprofit, it's pretty hard to argue that Amazon's taking your funds away, but it's not yet at least, who knows? But the mindset, all of our mindsets are changed by Amazon and that expectation.
Yeah.
Amazon gives me a personal experience. Therefore, when I'm engaging with another retailer, but also when I'm engaging with my health insurance organization, I expect them to personalize things for me. I expect everybody I interact with, every organization, to give me an Amazon-like experience. And so unique as a result, I'm frequently disappointed.
Yeah. Yeah, they've really raised the bar.
Yeah. AI is opening that up for the rest of us, that we find that machine learning specifically allows you to understand patterns of behavior and build and orchestrate a journey as a result. Now, we have a partner of ours that does orchestration where you can actually set up individual responses based on needs. That's not a machine learning platform, although you can incorporate machine learning into it. But what we're finding in our research is that a handful of companies are doing an excellent job of really personalizing and building the journey on an individual basis even, or at least at a mass customized level. But most are not there today. There's a huge opportunity.
Yeah. Brilliant. So there's opportunity for organizations to improve personalization. Another big thing I found also, Jim, in the whole process of customer experience and enhancing it is having more integration across their channels. I use this webinar platform called Demio, and so one of my business channels has expanded as a result of the pandemic. So I never used to do webinars before, but because of the pandemic and I'm not physically going out to the training anymore, of course, I'm using webinars as a platform to reach more people. And in doing my research, because I'm a customer service trainer, I wanted to use a platform that was customer friendly, meaning if I had an issue technically or there was an issue with the, just how to use the platform or what to do, I could message them and their response time would be like instantaneously. And of course, after doing research and speaking to other trainers, both here in Jamaica and overseas, I was able to pick Demio. They're fairly new in the game and there's some features that they have that they don't have that Zoom has. But one of the things I liked about them was that they were omni-channel and they were integrated. So it didn't matter which platform I spoke to them on, whether it was Facebook Messenger or Instagram DM, or it was the little chatbot that was directly on their website. That conversation continued on each platform, and each person I spoke to was a continuation of the conversation from before. And it just made things so seamless and easy to transact business with them. What are your thoughts on companies that do have different channels? So they operate on multi-channels, but they're not operating on an omni-channel perspective where everything is integrated. How can they go about doing that? And do you think that's the best approach?
Clearly, it's the best approach. As you just said right there, you're right. You don't want to have to think about, did I start this with chat? Did I start it with the box? Where did I start it? You don't care.
Right.
One of our sayings is thinking is bad. The more you make your customers think, the more at risk you are for losing their loyalty. That comes back to the need to be multi-channel. I do not want to have a different experience, or more importantly, to get different answers if I call you than if I chat, than if I use other methods of interaction.
Right.
I want to know I'm getting that same experience across the board. We find it's hard because we tend to have a siloed approach to improvement. And that comes back to earlier, that if you don't engage the leadership and you don't engage the overall organization around this area, and again, the parts of the organization that can be part of the solution, then you end up with siloed solutions. If you're building siloed solutions, you're going to be in trouble. But if instead you're taking the time to integrate across them, that's when you can make a huge difference in not just keeping your current customers, but bringing in more, because you're going to keep your base because they like the experience and they're going to talk to others.
Yeah, that's true. Brilliant. All right. So one of the things that we have to also do, and I know you mentioned it earlier in terms of involving the people on the ground, the ones who are in the grassroots every day, dealing with the customers. They know some of the challenges that the customers are actually actually experiencing. But how do you get them motivated? What if they're bringing in all of these systems, we have to learn all of these new things, I'm not getting any new pay for it, I don't feel motivated? How do you get them engaged, motivated, feel like they're a part of the process? Do they need to be included in the decision making? Or is it a case where you just roll it out and say, listen, this is a new path we're taking?
Well, so let's go back to that change management comment earlier. And again, we're big believers in involving change management. We find that customer experience, when they involve a change management approach, they have way more impact.
Okay.
On a business-to-business level, Jen Zamora from Dow, they're a client of ours. They have a great approach, and she's been posting every week on LinkedIn, not every week, every month on LinkedIn, their journey to customer experience. And last week's was about how they incorporate change management into their approach. It's a great read. Follow Jen Zamora and you look at her posts of what they've been doing.
Okay.
Now, in our case, we're fans of, I like both John Cotter's approach, which is on structure, but we talk a lot about the ADKAR change model from ProSci. And I like it because it's simple, but not simplistic. And ADKAR has 5, it's an acronym. If you want somebody to change, they need to be aware of the need to change. They need to desire to change. They need to know what to change. They need to be able to change. And it has to be reinforced.
Right. So
Unique, I'm going to try to convince you to move away from Jamaica to Minnesota. That's my goal here. So first of all, you need to be aware of your need to move to Minnesota, about how it's so beautiful here. It's fantastic. Got to move up here. You need to desire to come up here. You've got to say, yes, I don't have any snow boots. I need snow boots. That's fantastic. I need to get you to desire that. You have to know how to move here, and I'll work with you to get a moving agency. You have to be able to. You've got to be able to find somebody to move you from Jamaica up here. And then I need to continually reinforce why this living in snow is a good thing.
Oh, really?
So I've got an uphill battle. What we find is that most organizations focus on the first A and the K and maybe the second A. So they say, Unique, are you aware that you can move to Minnesota? Here's how you can do it, and let me give you some training on how to live as a Minnesotan. But I never took the time to help you understand why Minnesota is a beautiful state and why you'd want to leave Jamaica coming here.
Right. Which is so
you
important.
might argue that's a high bar. That's a high bar. But now let's turn it back to your marketing person. And if you want your employees to use new systems, a lot of groups start with awareness. Hey, we have a new system, and then jump right to training. And here's the training. They didn't take the time to say, and this is why this is going to help you. This is why you should want to do that. Love the ad car model because it helps us remember, have I built against the desire component? Right. And if your changes are not taking place, that's where I'd look.
Amazing, amazing. Oh, such great points. Such great points, Jim. Okay, Jim, could you share with us, how do you stay motivated every day? You're dealing with all of these different things: change management, culture change, people development, customer experience across different industries, trying to solve problems, some of them big, some of them really small. But I mean, you have to be constantly motivated in order to keep your clients motivated and energized, that they're excited to embark on these new ventures. How do you stay motivated amongst all of this?
Well, I'll tell you, it's really hard the first few months of the coronavirus because even though I am an introvert, I am very introverted.
Really?
I get a lot of energy off of one-to-one conversations.
Okay.
A number of years ago, like 10 years ago, when I was fired from a company, trying to find my new job, I had 133 coffees. Now, that doesn't count lunch. That doesn't count dinner. Doesn't count beer. Just strictly 133 just on the coffees alone, everything else. And now we bring it to today. In March and April, it was hard because nobody wanted coffee.
Right.
It's very easy for us all to pull inside. I get my energy out of one-on-one conversations. I love talking with other customer experience leaders to find out what they're doing. And so one of the things I did this year, actually started before the coronavirus, is you may have seen Forrester's prediction that 1 out of 4 customer experience people would lose their jobs this year.
Yeah.
Because they're not showing business value.
Mm-hmm.
A year earlier, CustomerThink came out with research that showed that only 1 out of 4 programs can show business value. So in January, I got really interested in that and said, well, what is it that separates that 1 out of 4 who are going to be fired from the 1 out of 4 that are who we all want to be, the ones that are really showing impact?
Mm-hmm.
And so this year, we've interviewed so far 86 people in customer experience roles. We've added a few as well in finance and CEOs to understand, what does excellence look like in customer experience? And I tell you, when I leave one of those conversations with somebody who's truly expert,
Mm-hmm.
I am motivated, I'm inspired.
Nice. Very nice. All right. Jim, could you share with us maybe an app, website, or tool that you use in your business that you absolutely can't live without?
Well, there are 2 I'll mention. First of all, we use Microsoft Teams as a way to connect and to use the visual. Big fan of that. That's number one, but some way that you can connect and have that camera turned on. That's important. The coronavirus taught us about a new tool that I want to pitch. I'm not an investor or anything, but I love it. It's called Stormboard.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a online interactivity whiteboarding tool that you do not have to train anybody. It's amazing. The service is really responsive. We have really enjoyed working with that. So if you're looking at a tool for doing online workshops,
Mm-hmm.
we've loved them. They've been great partners. They've been very flexible, been willing to teach us how to facilitate. But what we found is that we don't have to spend a lot of time teaching our clients how to use the tool. They just get in and they start to use it.
Nice. Very nice. Okay. So we'll have the link for that platform in the show notes of this episode. All right. Could you share with us maybe one or two books that have had the biggest impact on you? It could have been a book that you read many years ago, or maybe a book that you read recently that, has really had a great impact on you.
Well, so I just came back from vacation a couple of weeks ago out in Maine. Mm-hmm. And what I do when I go on vacation, this is geeky, I read books. Mm-hmm. And I read 3 books and half of 3 others. But the one that really hit me hard is Leading Change by John Kotter.
Okay. Which you mentioned earlier as it related to change management, correct?
Exactly. And Time called it one of the most influential business books of the last 25 years.
Wow.
And he's got a great method of walking through it. And so, as I mentioned, we've used ProSci in the past. I've read their book, and that's good from an outcomes perspective. Mm-hmm. What Kotter does is he walks through a process that starts with first of all, you've got to create a sense of urgency. What we find most customer experience leaders failing at is the next step, which is to create a powerful change coalition. And then from there, creating a vision. He has 8 total steps, but it just spoke to me. And yes, I realize that shows how geeky I am, that a book on change management on the beach spoke to me, but I strongly recommend that book.
Right. All right. So any others?
Power of Moments I liked a lot, Chip and Dan Heath. And I interviewed one of them for my blog, getting their feedback at Heart of the Customer. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting because we have a little bit different approach in that they're all about building positive moments, which I agree with as well. They don't like journey maps as much because journey maps also focus on the negative. But I do feel you have to understand what are the most crucial moments. But in there, they also talk about, do you want to spend your time fixing problems or creating great interactions? And what they find is that most organizations spend their time fixing problems, but the potential of creating great moments of truth with your customers has 9 times the organizational value than fixing problems.
Amazing.
Great book.
Amazing. Brilliant. Okay. So, Jim, can you share with us maybe something that you're working on now? It could be something that you're working on to develop yourself or something that you're working on to develop your people.
Well, both. We are working, as I mentioned, we've done 86 interviews so far to understand what is it that leads to excellence in customer experience. Mm-hmm. And one hint, it does not involve the letters N, P, or S. It's really involving engaging executives, creating a vision. We are right now in the process of distilling that and hope to be coming out with our own book, again, a second book, here in probably about 6 months to a year. Mm-hmm. But we're learning that there are people out there that are truly transforming their organizations around the customer experience, and that there is a process that does it, but that it's rare and that most organizations are not having impact, but there are some that are truly transforming their companies around the customer.
Right. Okay, so when do you think that will be out?
Well, we're supposed to start analysis on the first of the month and do the writing through the end of this year. So hopefully first and second quarter next year. But I know that our original project plan on the last book had us getting done in 2017, and it came out in 2019. So my history is not said I'm so good at getting the writing done in time. So we'll see.
Okay, so we'll definitely look out for that. Definitely try and see if we can keep in contact with you, follow you, which leads me to my next question. After our listeners have listened to this awesome interview and they're like, I really want to connect with Jim. I'd like to follow what he's doing, what his team is up to, see when that next book is coming out. Where can they find you online?
Well, the most common way is LinkedIn, Jim Tincher. There's only one other Jim Tincher I know of. He's a photographer, so it should be pretty easy to find us. Look for the Minnesotan. We also blog at heartofthecustomer.com. I do most of the blogging. My team also does some as well. And those are the primary 2 areas. I'm on Twitter occasionally, but really LinkedIn's where I'm spending my time.
All right. Sounds good. So we'll definitely have the show notes in our show notes for this episode. Jim's the link to Jim's connections on the platforms he just listed. So you guys can connect with Jim and follow him. Great. All right, Jim. So before we wrap our interview up, we always like to ask our guests, do you have a quote or a saying that during times of adversity or challenge, that you'll typically revert to this quote. It kind of helps you to refocus, get you back on track. Do you have one of those?
I do, and it's particularly poignant during the coronavirus. And it's from John Le Carre, who's an English author, who said, "The desk is a dangerous place from which to view the world."
The desk is a dangerous place. Okay, explain.
We find a lot of customer experience people don't actually talk to customers. It's really important. It's been harder in the coronavirus, so it has to be done virtually. But if you want to create an amazing customer experience, it starts by talking to your customers.
Amazing.
And that quote has inspired me for years now.
Nice, nice. You know, it's so simple, and it's almost like a BFO, like a blinding flash of the obvious, because clearly, how are you going to know what needs to be improved if you're not talking to the person who you're trying to make the improvements for? Because you need their input. It can't be based on what you feel or think. It must be based on their experience. So you'd think, you know, duh, people are doing that, but a lot of companies don't actually do that consistently.
Exactly. In fact, a lot of customer experience people don't even do it consistently. And that's the opportunity. So if I were to wish one thing for you, for everybody listening to this, it's that you will tomorrow reach out to a few customers and just have a conversation.
Nice.
I had a great interview with a customer experience leader in France, and she said one of the benefits of the pandemic is that I used to visit all the customers in France because I could do it without traveling. Now I'm talking to our customers in China, in Brazil, in Canada, because they're all the same distance away from me now.
That's true. The French ones and the Chinese and the Brazilians, it takes that much energy to call each one if you're calling somebody just the same in France.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's my encouragement to everybody is reach out to your customers no matter where they are.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, Jim. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule today. We really appreciate all the great nuggets that you shared with us today as it relates to customer journey mapping and digital transformation and solving problems, real problems for your customers, looking at your customer experience design, talking to your people, because if you're not, as you said, if you're not talking to the customer, then you're not going to really be able to understand what they're going through so you can fix those issues. And of course, looking at change management. Looking at what motivates your team and ensuring that you're doing things that will get them to be desirous of wanting to change, so that after you put all of these things, you know, down on paper, they can actually come into reality through, you know, actions that are being taken to make that experience that much better. So thank you so very much.
Thank you, Unique. I've enjoyed it. And thanks again for having me here.
You're welcome. So just a reminder, please feel free to hop onto Facebook and join our private Facebook group, Navigating the Customer Experience Community, and follow us on Twitter at NavigatingCX. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant. Thank you for listening to Navigating the Customer Experience. If you'd like to connect with us even more, please feel free to hop onto Facebook and join our private Facebook group, Navigating the Customer Experience Community. And of course, feel free to follow us on Twitter at NavigatingCX. We also have a new book available on Amazon, The ABCs of a Fantastic Customer Experience. It's available in ebook and paperback. So if you want to increase revenue in your organization, build a stronger service culture, and create employees or develop employees who are really mastering service delivery in your business, you need to grab a copy of this book. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant.
Thanks for listening. For more awesome resources to take your customer service game to another level, head over to navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. See you next time.